Hi, and welcome to You Haven't Seen What? A couple's quest to rectify the wrongs of their partner never seeing culturally relevant movies. I'm Joelle.
I'm Parry.
And we're a couple.
We are.
And yes,
that was not a question. That was a statement.
That was a statement. And yes, before any of you say, what? Who hasn't seen Dirty Dancing? I just want to preface it and say that we both have prior to this podcast.
We both are old enough to have seen it in the theater.
Yes, I did see it in the theater.
And me as well. I saw it with my parents.
I saw it with my mama.
Yep. My mother really, really wanted to see this.
My mom really wanted to see it too. I think we saw like a matinee on some random like weekday or something.
And we're going to get to the parts of the movie that she never ever spoke about in a little while here.
We are. It's very different watching it when you're not in your teens versus watching it when you're 40s.
Might have been much more uncomfortable watching it with my parents later on than it was at the time.
Maybe.
Or there would have been some things to talk about.
Well, I think there's still things to talk about that we probably haven't talked about with our parents. So, you know.
But I think what you were saying was that, we've both seen it. And the idea was that you called me and you were like, have you watched Dirty Dancing lately? Of course, no, I haven't watched it in like 10 years. I'm like, no, you need to watch it again because it's not what you remember. It's not the movie you think it is. You need to watch this again. So this is kind of watching it again for the first time.
Well, and this really all stemmed back from MegaCon. We were obviously talking to a lot of different people, and we had a couple of celebrities admit to us that they had never seen Dirty Dancing.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if you're of a certain age, you pretty much should have seen this movie. I don't really see that there's any reason why you wouldn't have seen this movie. And we kind of looked at them, and after I, of course, admitted that I hadn't seen The Princess Bride, they kind of gave me this look, and then they said, well, I haven't seen Dirty Dancing. And then I gave them that look.
They had to give that admission. They kind of hung their heads a little bit and said, yeah, I haven't seen Dirty Dancing.
And I realized that I hadn't seen it in a while, so I had a trip, sans Parry, and I was like, let me just watch this movie again because it's such a great movie. Well, I was fucking bawling in my damn airline seat for a good 30 minutes. And part of it was the recognition, of course, that we no longer have Patrick Swayze.
Mm-hmm.
And part of it is that we didn't really give him any credit for his acting ability, which is so just on point in this film.
We also no longer have Jennifer Grey's nose.
Stop it. Really? So there are a couple of people we no longer have in this film, which is kind of shocking. But also simultaneously, it triggered something that I don't think my 10-year-old self would have ever figured out. And not even maybe in my early 20s when I was just watching it to rewatch it and, coding, nobody puts baby in a corner and all of those things, right? So we just think of Dirty Dancing as a sort of very happy-go-lucky.
We think it's about dancing. And that's actually a very small part of it in many ways.
Well, dancing in like this forbidden relationship, right? A little bit. But yeah, and it's so much more than that. So I'm glad we actually watched this again. And I'm glad for the people who admitted to us that they hadn't watched it.
We won't call anyone out.
We are not calling anyone out. Don't ask us. We're taking it to our graves.
But speaking of MegaCon, we did want to mention a couple more people. We said last time that we would. And I did just have to tell, before we get into everything else here, the great story of Paul Reubens, who was fantastic. And we went up and, introduced ourselves, and we're talking to him for a while. And
Paul Reubens has seen Dirty Dancing. Don't worry, it's not him.
And we were discussing, in terms of signing the item we had sought out, the brand new Pee Wee Herman Pop, and of which there were very few available. So we had found one, and he was signing. He's like, well, who do I make it out to? And we started joking around about, well, if we ever split up, who would get it if our names are on it? And he's giving us the Pee Wee look. He's got his head kind of down. He's looking up at us, kind of half smiling. And he finally says, you know what? If you ever think about breaking up, just get on my Instagram and talk to me, and we'll work this out. We'll figure it out. And it was said with all sincerity, and it was very sweet.
Well, we bantered, I think, back and forth for a while. And then he's like, you guys should never break up.
Yes.
So really, if you do, let me know. We'll figure something out. But I don't think you guys should ever really break up, which was very sweet of Paul Reubens, a.k.a. Pee Wee Herman, a.k.a. Remember, Large Marge sent you. In my brain, I know that wasn't him who said it, but in my brain, I'm like, oh, Pee Wee.
Well, a.k.a. the manager of Pinball City from Midnight Madness.
City, exactly.
Of which we had a long conversation about the gun that shoots quarters and whether or not that gun is anywhere still around. And he really got to thinking about it. He's like, I don't know what happened to that gun.
I can't find any of those guns. That's the strangest part. I can't find eBay, like nothing. I can't find anything like that.
If you are a collector and you have that gun, I think Paul Reubens would like to talk to you.
Yes, so maybe you should Instagram him too.
He also mentioned that the cowboy outfit that he wears in that scene with the really furry chaps, that he also wore at a Minnie Pearl tribute. That was the other time he wore that outfit.
Shh. What if the studio doesn't know that they took it? And now you're busting him.
Oh, damn. Sorry, Paul.
You are such... You're such a blower-upper.
I'm glad you didn't just end it with the first part of that. But yes, I'm a blower-upper.
You are a blower-upper.
But yes, we really enjoyed speaking with him and a number of other people at Con. We can't even go into all the people like Catherine Tate and Mitch Pileggi and all the cool people there. But we did want to mention a couple of other T-shirt makers that were awesome. And the first was Brittany and Ryan at Great Adventure Supply Company. They make all these really cool sort of Disney-inspired shirts and pins and
patches and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, a bunch of cool stuff. So check them out, Great Adventure Supply Company. And what's the other one? The one with the Hiss T-shirt. I've been wearing this cat-inspired version of Kiss that says Hiss on it. You know, we've worn it with Jason Momoa and Andrew McMahon, and Andrew McMahon even commented on what a cool shirt it was.
So Housebroken Clothing.
Yes.
So Scott and Co. I know Scott's the artist there.
I don't remember her name, and I talked to her for a long time. But Scott and his cool significant other, who we really enjoyed talking to. So some awesome gear they have there, and like I said,
check them out on Insta.
The Hiss T-shirt, it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. It's on our Insta.
And they have lots of other cool stuff, mugs and glasses and cutting boards and all kinds of stuff. So.
Yeah, they do.
So, with that said, back around to
Dirty Dancing,
to Dark Crystal.
Because I still fuck yourself. Oh my God, please.
I did have a revelation. I realized that if you mix a pod person and a gelfling, that you get Yoda. That those two merge together.
We are on a new podcast. This is a new week. This has a whole lot to talk about, and I'm not talking about the Dark Crystal any longer.
The crystal.
No, you're the crystal.
Although we have had a lot of people who were very excited to hear and to watch the video we have on our website of the Crystal Methods Vegas album syncing up to the Dark Crystal.
Right.
Some people who were fans had never heard this before. So,
or they just wanted to watch it again.
Yeah.
Either way.
So it's on our website.
But to Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
So I'm going to start with the synopsis since we've already sort of prefaced why we're doing Dirty Dancing.
So there are people out there who don't know what Dirty Dancing is about?
I think there are. Well,
I actually realized I thought I knew what it was about, and I was wrong.
I thought I knew what it was about too. And not that I was wrong, but I wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
So, folks, if you are wavering, this podcast is for you. If you are strong in your conviction about what you think Dirty Dancing is or isn't, this is also for you. Men who give their wives grief for watching it, maybe this is the one that you might want to watch again because you're older and you have a little bit more miles on you, just in general.
Yeah, and if you've only watched it and listened to it in the background and listened just for the songs or come in at the dance sequences, sit down and watch it again. I was actually a little surprised. I was actually a lot surprised at what I got out of it this time, and I had not seen it since somewhere around the mid-90s or so.
Right. So here's a synopsis that I have. Do you have a synopsis?
Please continue.
That's a no. Dirty Dancing is a story of finding out who you are when you thought you knew exactly who you were, and then falling in love in the most unexpected places.
Oh, that's good.
Right?
Yeah.
I know. It's like I do this.
And that's going to be really easy for me to put on the website. So.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad that I'm making it just easier for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. So I guess the big question and what we can we can either go to favorite quote first and then go into sort of how everything makes you feel and, what were some memorable moments the next time around, or you tell me, what do you want to do? You want to start with the quote, and the quote will sort of lead us in?
I was going to say, I'd say start with the quote, and then as we go along, we will sort of explain why that quote. Okay. I wouldn't explain it right away. I would say, just...
Fair enough. So the quote for our pod title is, "You gotta hold the frame." And if anybody knows that quote from Patrick Swayze, a.k.a. Johnny Castle, right? Bad boy extraordinaire. So he says, "Look, spaghetti arms, this is my dance space. This is your dance space. I don't go into yours. You don't go into mine. You got to hold the frame." So, and we're going to kind of talk about why that's really not about dancing.
Yeah, there's a lot of double meaning in the movie, and that was what I didn't get the first time, was not only the very subtle double meanings, but some very overt as well that just didn't strike me. But again, I went to go see this with my parents. My mother really wanted to see it because she'd heard about the music and the dancing, and that was all she ever spoke about. We really never did speak about the rest. And in watching this movie again, this movie is all about sex. And much more complicated than that, but really, even the title, I feel like Dirty Dancing is like rock and roll is a euphemism for sex. I feel like Dirty Dancing is a euphemism for sex. And the title sequence at the beginning, with the sort of slow motion, it's very sultry. I almost feel like that is how there's a lot of in here about old establishment and the youth culture, and I felt like even that opening sequence was like the way it's in black and white and you see it in slow motion was almost like someone from the establishment witnessing this dancing and just looking at how disgusting and dirty it is to them. And so that was when that even came up at the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, this is not about just the music. This is about sex.
What do you mean? It's about
and
baby,
sexuality,
obviously.
Yes, baby, or
not becoming a baby, deflowering.
Mm.
So I guess what are some memorable moments besides the opening credits for you this next time around, this go around, I should say?
I think the first time I saw it, I didn't realize how much of the one who was very aggressive about the relationship was more baby. That Patrick Stewart, Jesus, that that Patrick Swayze's character was actually much more, I wouldn't say passive, but he was maintaining that separation more. He was much more nervous because he had a lot more to lose.
Yes, he was staying in his frame.
Yes. And so I'd say, yeah, it is a good time to start talking about what that frame is in terms of what you were thinking.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on in this movie, and I think the big takeaway for me was the fact that we really don't talk about like Kellerman's. Kellerman's is supposed to be this great family establishment, and you could take your family and you can go to the Catskills and have a great time.
In the last generation, when kids would actually hang out with their parents.
Right. So a lot of it, though, is like, well, which families are taking their families to Kellerman's? And there is a very distinct dividing line between those even working wait staff and those as the dancers, right? So there's the ones who might be well off and working their way up and learning a trade, right? So like, what is it? Neil or Robbie, right? So Neil and Robbie. So they're there and they're working up, whether they're serving or whether they're checking out and they own the hotel, they're working their way up. And then, they're the dancers. And the dancers are just, these second-class citizens. They're nobodies. They're nothings.
Yeah.
Right? So even Patrick Swayze, Johnny Castle says, like, I'm a nothing. I'm a nobody. That's why they treat me that way, because I'm really not.
And we see them used and abused throughout, whether it's by the wealthy wives or the
bungalow bunnies.
Yes, or even the Kellermans themselves. You know, the way that what's the father? Max Kellerman. He treats them like jerks, and he's training his son to be just as big a jerk to them.
Right.
And the classism that runs throughout this, that's really, even more than the sex, the classism is what really stands out on top. That was the thing I really noticed. And again, I wouldn't have noticed. I was a privileged kid from the suburbs, honestly, and I was not going to pick out classism and sexism and things like that in 1987 when I went to go see this in the theater. But seeing it now, it was extremely obvious.
And here's the thing is that Baby doesn't really understand that. Baby's not looking at it as us versus them. Mm-hmm. She's just looking at it as people and interesting people. And she doesn't really understand why there's this big distinction, and ends up falling in love with the guy essentially on the wrong side of the track, so to speak, and all of this, right? Because she's pretty smitten from him from the very beginning, because he's something that she's never experienced.
Yes. And I would say that I don't know if dance sequences like that ever happen in real life, where she walks in and everyone is just dancing in that room where she first kind of meets that whole side, meets all the dancers, all the entertainers.
Have you been to a Jamaican party?
See, you're right. No, I haven't. Saying. So not yet. I mean, yeah. I've been around your Jamaican family,
right.
But I haven't seen a dance party like that.
Oh man, it's pretty much like that.
I thought that only happened in 80s movies, but
no, it definitely does not. Just go to Carnival. It's pretty much that.
So, but the scene where she sees him and he dances with her, like she watches him dance with Penny, and then he dances with her, and she's actually good for a minute. She sort of like takes on the fluidity that he gives her in that scene. And then the minute he lets go of her and just walks away, she becomes immediately very awkward. And I thought that was a really interesting way to show how she's trying to step into that world and step out of who she is and what she's used to. But again, she doesn't realize what she's doing at that moment. But her acting in that scene where she's acting very awkward was pretty brilliant.
Right, because Jennifer Grey, we know, could dance.
Right.
This wasn't because her parents, right?
Yeah, her father was or was her mother too? I know her father, I think Joel Grey, was famous. In fact, he and Jerry Orbach, who does not dance at all in this, but Jerry Orbach is famous for his singing and dancing. He opened in Chicago the same night that Joel Grey opened in, I forget which musical he was in, but they sort of had a competition running because they both opened the same nights to see who got more ticket sales. And Patrick Swayze was actually in a play with Joel Grey in his very early days.
Interesting.
Somewhere around the mid-70s. So.
Yeah, we should talk about the fact that Jennifer Grey almost didn't do it because her and Patrick Swayze, hated each other. Jeez.
Yeah,
that's production notes, I guess.
It is, but and we can come back. I actually feel like I derailed our conversation about.
You did.
I did.
You
sorry.
always derail our conversation.
I think the classism. There's a part where, when she realizes it toward the end, and she says to her father, "You taught me to give everyone a fair shake, but you meant everyone like you.
Yes.
Meaning everyone like us." And he doesn't have anything to say there because I think he knows she's right. And I thought that was a really interesting part, again, that I had never noticed, was her becoming very vocal and very adult in calling her family out for their own privilege.
Well, even before that, so, right, Patrick Swayze calls her out, right?
Yeah.
So Johnny Castle calls Baby out and kind of says, I don't see you sticking up for me with your dad, basically.
And when she is talking about, you need to go and stick up for yourself, and then the minute her sister comes out, they duck down behind the bushes. Yeah, and that's when he's like, yeah, it's very much a do as I say, not as I do moment.
Exactly.
And she's showing her privilege at that moment too.
Well, a little bit. She was like, hey, I just don't want to get into trouble, sorta. But it comes off as so much more. So yeah, and then of course there's Penny, right? So there's Penny, Cynthia Rhodes. Oh gosh, love that woman. She was amazing in Flashdance, amazing. What is it? John Travolta, Staying Alive. Like, she's such a great dancer and an awesome actress.
And apparently so pretty that they had to put on a lot of makeup during the where she was in pain, because they said she just didn't look in pain enough.
Nice. I wish I had that problem.
Or she just didn't look, not that she couldn't act like she was in pain, but even when she was acting, they said she just was too attractive. She didn't look like she had just been through a botched surgical procedure.
Right. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I had, or the most impactful takeaway I had, especially just in light of recent events, with all this defunding of Planned Parenthood and this idea of back alley abortions, or this concept, even, I can't even believe I'm saying that, being thought of at this time period, right? So, you know, Penny goes and she basically gets an illegal abortion from who she thinks is a doctor, not a doctor, right? And comes back and basically is dying. She has like an infection is what it feels like he didn't perform the procedure well. And baby sort of just kicks it into high gear, and she goes and gets her dad because, you know, she knows he's a doctor, and just come with me. Not even thinking about consequences or repercussions or anything, just that somebody is in pain.
And don't forget that she got the money for the abortion from her father to begin with. She didn't tell him what it was for, but he trusted her that it was something legal, because he even asked, is it illegal? And she hesitates and says no. And he believes it and gives her the money. And they don't want to accept it because they know she has gone and just gotten it from her father. And that also shows that further division in their class, in terms of, you know, they have a problem and they have no real way to solve it, but she can just go and ask her dad.
Right, for the money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things that sort of happen there, right? So there's this idea of a father and daughter being so close, and, you know, baby and Dr. Houseman were, you know, thick as thieves, essentially. And he thought that everything that he had in line for her, and that he viewed her a specific way, and that's how she was. And all of a sudden she's changing. Now, whether that's maturing, whether that's changing, whether that's coming into your own, whatever it is.
It's also the time period, too.
It is the time period, but he is not necessarily appreciative of it. So he continues to treat Penny, right? Not even begrudgingly, because she obviously needs help. But the fact of the matter is that he's now disappointed in his daughter, because she's gone ahead and done this. And then to even further complicate it, right, he finds out later that she's seeing Johnny, right? And probably,
she thinks that it was Johnny, because he just assumes that it was one of these, you know, entertainer
kids. Everyone has seen this movie.
Getting another one in trouble. So,
right.
But what I'm saying is his assumption also goes with his privilege, that he can't even form the first thought being that it was someone other than one of the other dancers.
Right.
Someone else of low class.
Exactly.
And that's where, you know, again, he gets called out multiple times.
Low status, not low class.
Right.
That sounds...
And, yeah, and you can see it in him that he doesn't, much like many people who have privilege, he may never have directly done something wrong to anyone, but he is still benefiting from the privilege of who he is. And it's interesting that, you know, they're a Jewish family. And so, because, you know, resorts like Kellerman's is supposed to be were places where a lot of Jewish people went to vacation, because they actually weren't welcome a lot of other places at that time period. And so a lot of those resorts were more specifically for Jewish people. And a lot of reviews have been written about how this is actually a very Jewish movie if you know what to look for.
Yes, and it's semi-autobiographical.
And so it was interesting that it was showing that people who have historically been persecuted also are capable of persecuting, that we all are. But we often don't realize our privilege, especially as white people, whether it's Jewish or Irish or whatever. We often don't realize how we're part of a system that we may not have set up personally and was set up long before we were born, but we still benefit from it. The dad he doesn't want to confront it. And the way Jerry Orbach often, he'll hang his head and look down in a way that says, I'm hearing you, but I can't hear you. because it means that I'm wrong in something, in my whole belief system, and I can't see it. I won't see it.
It's tough. I mean, I don't think, just from a daddy's girl perspective, because I can say that, right? So just from the perspective of a girl never wanting to disappoint her father, there's this thing that you idolize in a certain way. And God knows I've definitely married somebody exactly like my father.
What?
So
I have never been a DJ.
I know, but you like to think that you're a DJ. So there's
I
this.
have records.
You have enough records. So there's this thing that you never want to disappoint as a woman, as a female, that you don't want to disappoint your dad. There's definitely that connection and that feeling of not even coddling so much as I want to live up to my dad's expectations. And that is exactly what Baby Houseman goes through. She wants to live up. She wants to be everything that she can. Wow, this is really serious for Dirty Dancing. Sorry.
Well, it was much more serious than I thought it was.
It was way more serious than we thought it was. And it was sort of like, I watched it and I told Parry to watch it. And then afterwards he called me. He's like, holy shit. He's like, I feel like I've been watching a different movie my entire life. And I'm like, me too, because it's completely heavy in so many different segments, and then you break it up with some great comedy here and there provided. But
sort of the brilliance of it was that they wrote a movie about and created this movie that was about classism and sexism, and yet couched it inside of a movie about dancing and music. And so it's kind of like they wrapped the broccoli in bacon. Because
they totally did. This is covered in bacon and like caramel sauce. Like, I don't even know what this is. I am so confused by it, and I am just confused by the relevance that it has even today. The fact that we're talking about a woman's right, like I don't even want to discuss that really, because we're not a political podcast. But
I'm going to, but
oh boy, but just the fact that we're still talking about this, and we're still talking about classism, and we're still talking about how people view each other and don't necessarily take each other for face value. That's why I think this movie stands the test of time, and maybe we should move into Good, Bad, and Ugly.
Well, and I just was going to say, as we move into that I guess, and this could be part of the good, is that you can sort of take out of it what you want. So if you really want to just see the dancing and the music, you can. You're forced to see the other parts. And it's much like Neil's line where he says, sometimes you see things you don't want to see.
So I think it's time for the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Get in there. We're getting much better. That was pretty good.
Yeah, right. All right. So what's your good?
My good, I have to say, one of the true greats of it is Jerry Orbach. And because he is such an amazing actor, connecting to what you were saying just now about their relationship, we don't have that many scenes with Jerry Orbach in this film. But by the time he says, "You're not the person I thought you were," even in the couple of scenes they've had together, we have established how close they are, and that's both the actors, but there's just something about the way he plays those scenes that expresses his love for her and his disappointment and his conflicted feelings about the whole thing that I think really is part of that emotional core of the film. And not that Swayze and Gray don't have a lot of chemistry in their scenes, and they're those scenes are very hot in their own way. But
I'm officially shaking my head at you.
But I think it's to me, Orbach, I felt like really was, in many ways, he was the one who showed how the generations were shifting, and every generation does not understand the new one. But that was a really different time at the world where there was women's lib, and there was a whole new sexual freedom. There were all of these things occurring. And I think that it's amazing that the film talks about those things. And it's interesting to see from the perspective that he is the one who is going through the most turmoil, it seems like, in terms of not understanding how the world is changing and how his daughter is changing as a part of that world. So
I don't think he's the one that has the most turmoil. Not at all. Baby's trying to figure out who she is. For Christ's sake, she's allowed people to call her baby. And she even retrospectively says in the opening, I don't know, it never used to bother me before, but yeah, it's like you're this kid and all of a sudden you've got to grow up. So I don't know. To me, the good was
maybe it was the moment the Kellerman kids was calling her. When
why are you stomping? Why are you stomping on my shit?
It fit in.
Why are you stomping on my shit? No, I didn't stomp all over your good, even though I disagree with it immensely as my good. Go ahead. The Kellerman kid, Neil. His name is Neil.
I was just gonna say he calls her, the way he says baby. He's not saying her name. Her nickname is baby. He's like calling her baby. Like hey baby. And it's a different tone, and it almost seems like that's part of her shift, is in not wanting to be called, to be referred that way, because it's very sexist. And the kid has been taught to be sexist because his dad talks about make all the daughters happy. And I think that is one of those shifting moments for her in terms of how she views being called baby.
Great.
So, okay.
Can I go to my
please.
good now? Thanks. I appreciate it. Being stepped on. I love how you stepped on me by telling me how somebody has stepped on baby. Well, don't put this baby in a corner, all right, mister?
Much like the t-shirt you're wearing right now.
Exactly. I'm totally wearing a don't nobody puts baby in the corner shirt. Because I can. So the good for me is Jennifer Grey and Patrick Swayze's chemistry. I don't care what the hell you say. I mean, the reality is that her excitement is palpable. There's something honest and raw about it. And his performance just really exudes confidence in sex, even though his words sometimes don't always match up the level of confidence that he portrays on a daily basis, right? So he'll go ahead and he'll razz Robbie and the crew and all of those folks. But the reality is that he still tries to stay in his lane, right? So he still tries to stay in his frame often. But the two of them together, and that's actually why they were cast, why Patrick Swayze was cast, and I think Billy Zane got booted, was that the chemistry that they had together was just perfect from the screening, from day one.
Maybe it was part of the fact that they had sort of a love-hate.
Yeah, it's sort of, Jennifer Grey was younger than Patrick Swayze, and Patrick Swayze was a, professional dancer. And, sometimes she would probably act a little immature, like the whole tickling scene. That was a real scene, right? That was left in.
Right, his frustration in that scene where she can't stop laughing. And
exactly.
He was really frustrated.
But a lot of those scenes made for the most memorable scenes, the most honest scenes. So like Sylvia and Mickey, that was completely off script. And they kept it in because the reality is that it was great. Just the way that they could play off of each other and be so in love and then frustrated with each other and then come back to each other. All that tension was really great. So you're bad?
Well, for as enjoyable as much of the soundtrack is, I thought it was pretty bad that I've Had the Time of My Life was sort of passed off as being a song that would have been played in the 60s, because everything else fit. But every time they played a modern song, those modern songs were non-diegetic in that they were taking place outside of the film.
Non-diegetic, Jesus Christ. As I roll my eyes at you, classist one, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Ungrade at Florida State. Those were taking place outside of the film, but that one they play at the end as though it was a song of the period, and it is so obviously not at all. And so that was pretty matter. That was pretty bad.
It doesn't matter. It's like the most epic. It is the song of the movie. It is the most epic song of the movie. It was number one. It won Best Original Song that year. It was.
I'm not saying it's a bad song.
No, I'm saying that it encompasses the entire freaking movie.
I can only suspend my disbelief for period accuracy so far.
Oh, my
and
Lord.
that stretched it too far for me.
You're my bad for this movie. You're my bad for this movie.
I have a lot of good to say about this, surprising even myself.
Okay.
But that I
can't. I'm rolling my eyes at you in judgment, in total judgment.
You and tens of thousands of people out there are...
You're ridiculous.
Yes.
It's already bad that we're not going to pick that for soundtrack smashes.
No.
Amazing they did not pick it either. But still, the amount of hate mail you're about to get right now is more than I could ever get for Dark Crystal and Harrison Ford combined. And that's saying a lot. Because, sci-fi gurus believe in that shit.
I will say, though, that for two actors that did not like each other, and you even made this point that even if you don't like each other, you need to act like you do.
Oh, no, their sex scenes are great.
And they are. Their chemistry
great.
is great. And, ever since working together on Red Dawn, like Jennifer Grey didn't want to do the movie. Patrick Swayze had to talk her into it.
Into Dirty Dancing, yeah.
Because she didn't want to do it because she had disliked him so much on Red Dawn.
Because he was an asshole. Is what I heard.
And I don't know the details, but...
He seems very particular. I know that type. So
notice my silence.
So the bad in this for me was just that Walkman scene. I don't know. I just don't like her practicing on that bridge. I hate it. It was too corny for me.
The wipeout?
Yeah, it was a little too corny for me. I could have done without it because she keeps going back to that bridge several times. It's I only needed to see that thing once.
But you learn everything faster through a montage.
I don't want that montage. And
was
then
in
you're
the 80s,
ugly.
you have to have a montage.
And then you're ugly, mister. Ugly. Oh, Lord. Seriously. That's for my husband every time he forgets the damn place right. But the good, bad, and ugly. I think my epic fail for this entire thing is that there was not a sequel sooner. Because that prequel bullshit of Havana Nights, a jillion years later, does not work for me. The crap they try to do on the TV does not work for me. They literally should have done a sequel, ASAP Rocky. And that is my ugly.
Well, Swayze didn't believe in sequels. He didn't want to do it. He didn't like sequels, so he turned it down. They offered him...
Really?
Yeah, he said no.
For sure?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, they offered him...
Idiot.
Yeah, he said, no, I don't want to do it.
Maybe because they didn't pay him anything the first go-around. Jesus. No, but he did the prequel. He did Havana Nights later.
Well, they paid him a ton for... It was like a cameo, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, they paid him for $5 million for that cameo.
Yeah.
I don't blame him because they paid him $500,000 for Dirty Dancing. And they banked.
We'll say word on the IMDb is that he didn't want to do a sequel because he didn't like sequels. So.
And he's now dead, so you really can't ask him, sadly.
He did do Roadhouse, though, and never a Roadhouse 2. Hooey!
That is such an inside joke, honey. That's so bad. Yeah, we like Roadhouse in these parts.
Although Next of Kin could almost be like Roadhouse, too.
Oh, God. And we're now tangential. So you can't find your ugly, can you? Did you find it? Oh, no, you can't find it. We got to move on. We're going to do production notes. So make sure you can find those. Oh, you got it? Okay, so it's production notes with Parry. Oh, wait, let me go first, though.
Okay.
All right, so maybe you should pronounce all these names. I don't want to pronounce all these names. Sure. I'm just gonna say.
Yeah, here it is. He was offered $6 million to do the sequel, and he turned it down, supposedly.
Well, he did $5 million for that cameo in Havana Nights. I don't know. So it was directed by Emil Ardilino. Oh my God, I'm butchering your name. I'm sorry. Produced by Linda Gottlieb. Written by Eleanor Bergstein. Mm-hmm.
She also co-produced.
Yes, you're correct. Music by John Morris and Eric Bulling. Edited by Peter C. Frank. Release date was August 21st, 1987. With a running time of 100 whopping minutes. The budget was $6 million, and the box office raked in $214 million. It was distributed by Vestron Pictures because nobody else wanted to touch it. Stupid idiots.
Yeah, they when they saw it, and the investors saw it, they said, burn the print and collect the insurance.
Yes, exactly.
That was an early cut, though.
6.9 out of 10, which I don't understand. All right, you haters, stop tanking the damn movie. That's so rude.
Well, again, I think it's a movie that has a lot of sort of misperception about it, including myself until I saw it again.
Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 72, so there's a little bit of redemption there. I mean, it's got to be at least a 7.5, even with the haters. I don't think it's a 7.5. I think it's a 10, truly. If you rewatch it again and look at the messaging, you could give a shit about the dancing, and it's a 10. Because the messaging is so amazing. But yeah, so that's what I've got for some production notes, and I'll fill in here and there, but it's all you, Parry. I will not stomp on your joy.
Well, to connect with what you were saying, or what we were just talking about with the love-hate relationship, I think it's interesting what they would do to get them back in the mode of having that chemistry, is that they would play their screen tests for them, because they'd had such great chemistry during those screen tests and during the practice dance sequences they'd done for that to get the part, that they would just play that for them again and remind them how good they were together, and that would get them back in the mode for a few days to shoot again. So I thought that was pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. I like that idea. Like, you all of a sudden you hate your partner, and then you go back to a moment where it was just magical.
So maybe everyone should record their best moments so that they can remind themselves.
Or pictures. Pictures work wonders.
True.
It's true. Anytime I'm mad at you, I just look at a picture. I'm just kidding.
Because a picture can't talk and ruin it.
Oh, there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah, the talking ruins it.
It does sometimes.
It can, yes.
It does.
Well, I think that it's really fascinating how much Eleanor Bergstein, the writer and co-producer, really had in making the film, and how much of her life is written into it. She actually was a dancer, a dirty dancer, at one of these resorts, and she had been called Baby when she was younger, and so she worked those elements in, and a number of others. You can read all about it on the internet, but she worked those into the screenplay, and was there often the writer. The joke in filmmaking is often that the writer is the person over in the corner that doesn't really get to say or do much once they're actually making the film. But in this case, as a co-producer, she was heavily involved. And she also, afterwards, I think did one other film, and then wrote the TV remake of Dirty Dancing. And that's what she's done since then, is only a couple of other things. So I guess she was living well off of Dirty Dancing, and then did it again.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Have you seen how much it's sold? Like, look at what it did at the box office.
Yeah.
I think it's because there wasn't a lot of great backing on this film initially. So to even get them to sort of re-up quickly was going to be difficult.
Right. Well, some of the scenes that may have been difficult in keeping them friendly were that all the lake scenes were actually shot in like the late fall. And so it was freezing. And that's why they don't do any close-ups on them, because they were shot in a different location. I think it was North Carolina. But they don't do any close-ups on them because their lips were actually blue in those scenes. And they had to strip down to summer gear. And they're doing all these scenes in the lake, and it was
the
freezing.
Winter. Yeah, it's the winter.
Yeah. And the only time you can actually see that the difference in seasons, because they apparently spray painted the leaves in the area green to match. But the scene where she goes to talk to her father, Jerry Orbach, on the lake, you can see fall leaves falling. And I actually noticed it and kind of chuckled as they were falling down, because he's wearing, a cardigan or something, and it was like, oh, this is, like the fall of our relationship, and it's changed so much. And I thought that maybe those leaves were very intentionally being dropped off the top of the roof. They kind of looked like someone had a handful of them, but maybe it was actually leaves falling from the trees if they were shooting all that in the fall. I don't know, but it looked very staged with the leaves falling, and it wasn't supposed to be fall. It did look cold, and it was supposed to be summer. I know, sometimes a summer morning is cold, but
not in South Florida. It's not.
Now, apparently, the scenes where Baby is
that was the fakest laugh ever in life. Exactly.
Apparently, the scenes where Baby is in her bra were cut. I didn't realize a lot of them were cut and then reinserted into the special edition later on. And the word is, again, read on the internet, that the original cut had her nude in one of the dancing scenes, and that it not only has it never been put into any special edition, but that no one can find those negatives. So I don't know if this is true or not.
Yeah, I would say no. They didn't need to go there. I mean, they had a hard enough time finding funding for this movie. That was like a big thing. At one point, I think Clarissa wanted to come on board, but they said, no, you got to cut that abortion stuff out. And they're like, oh, heck no, that's half the movie.
Yeah, a huge part.
Right. Oops. Touch the microphone. Don't do it, folks.
This to me was absolutely fascinating, is that the writer, co-producer, Bergstein, she talked about how popular the movie was in the Eastern Bloc. Like in Russia, in battered women's shelters, they would actually, after they got them, they dressed their wounds if they had any and gave them food, they would show them Dirty Dancing. And that as the world was changing at the time and the Berlin Wall was coming down, that you had people wearing Dirty Dancing t-shirts saying, we want what they have in the West. We want Dirty Dancing. And so to have that huge global impact, but also to be the image of what America was all about, I think, again, they were seeing the singing and dancing, but were missing all of the classism and sexism. And, though some of those things had changed in the 80s, abortions were legal, a lot of it had not and still has not. And we're backpedaling some. But it's just fascinating to think about these people using Dirty Dancing as their image of what the West had to offer.
I mean, it had to offer Patrick Swayze. I'm fine with that. I'm good with that.
Indeed.
Entirely.
And, I really, in seeing this again, the scenes where Patrick Swayze is talking about how he's treated and how, like, the rich women treat him and how he...
Oh, wait, I have that exact quote. Do you want it?
Yes.
You do? No, look, you got to understand what it's like, baby. You come from the streets and suddenly you're up here, and these women, they're throwing themselves at you, and they smell so good, and they really take care of themselves. I mean, I never knew women could be like that. And they're so rich. They're so goddamn rich. You must think they know about everything. And they're slipping room keys in my hands 2 and 3 times a day. Different women. So I think I'm scoring big, right? And for a while you think they wouldn't be doing this if they didn't care about me, right?
And I the way he does his line read and the way he says it, he sounds like someone who is not so bright and aware of the world, but he does get this. And it has dawned on him that he is a plaything and a toy for their amusement.
Right,
because
baby's like, hey, yeah, I get it. You were using them. And he's like, no, it wasn't like that. They were using me.
Yeah, which I thought was a very interesting turnaround from what we're typically shown in film.
Right.
Also interesting was that his character was meant to be Italian originally. And so I wonder if, before Swayze was cast, and I wonder if the whole Jewish girl falling for Italian boy was meant to be part of the tension originally too.
Could be. I mean, you have a lot of factors already going against Johnny Castle and Baby getting together. So
another interesting thing there is that the rich wife, the one who is with Johnny all the time, she was originally was cast as the mother, and she was playing Baby's mother. And
no, reverse. Strike that, reverse that. So...
no, you're right. You're right. No.
Strike that, reverse that. So Marjorie Houseman, who plays Baby's mother,
was originally
supposed to be the Bungalow Bunny, a.k.a. Oh my God, what is her name? Shenanigans. I had it on top of my brain, but anyway, yes. So she was supposed to be the Bungalow Bunny. However, the original wife got sick. I forget who it is now. The original wife got sick. So then Kelly Bishop turned into Marjorie Houseman. And then I think it was an assistant choreographer. Crap, I'm forgetting her name right now. She turned into the Bungalow Bunny.
Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting that they shifted those roles.
And I think it makes so much more sense now, especially when you see Marjorie Houseman on Gilmore Girls. She has such a great way of taking these very basic lines and just putting some dry comedic humor. Like, I think she gets it from me. Like, it's such a great line, and her delivery is perfect when she says things like that. It's really great.
It is. She does. She has a great wit about her. And I thought that the one who played the Bungalow Bunny just seemed perfect for the role, we'll say, without using any other words.
Yes. Our Vivian Pressman, a.k.a. our Bungalow Bunny, played by Miranda Garrison. See, I looked that up real quick.
Now, speaking of people who are typecast, Sharon Stone auditioned to be Baby.
No.
I don't think she was ever considered.
No.
Although Sarah Jessica Parker, I believe, was considered at one point.
Yeah, she had a lot of 80s hits. I think it was almost better having this unknown, quite honestly, in Jennifer Grey. There was something...
Had she done Parker Lewis? Had she done Ferris Bueller at that point?
I think she had done Ferris Bueller, but that was such a small role in comparison.
There's a part where she gets mad, though, and sounds to me like she's yelling at Ferris. When she's yelling at Patrick Swayze, her voice takes on this sound like she's yelling at Ferris, which... I had forgotten that she dated Matthew Broderick.
Yes, they did date.
And that right before they were going to do a big publicity tour for Dirty Dancing, they were in a bad car accident together in Ireland, and a mother and a daughter were killed, I believe.
Yes.
So, yeah, I had forgotten about that.
Yeah. I'm sure Matthew Broderick wants to forget about it too. Way to bring it up.
Well, I don't know. If you're listening to the podcast, Matthew, I'm sorry to bring that up.
Yeah.
Please listen to the next one. We won't talk about it anymore.
Anyone else from the cast you want to talk about, or do you want to head over to Soundtrack Smashes?
Now, did you know Dr. Ruth was going to play the Mrs.
Schumacher?
Yeah.
Yes, and then she was like, she heard that they stole things, so she said, "Peace that." Yeah, try again. My Dirty Dancing trivia is on point. What else you got for me?
Well, just the one last sad piece is about the one who played Robbie Gould, Max Cantor. He unfortunately passed away many years back now. He died of a heroin overdose, and he was researching addicts at the time. So I guess got very involved with his material, with his research, but unfortunately died. When was that, like 93?
91.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, it's time for Soundtrack Smashes. Oh my gosh, so much to talk about with this movie and the soundtrack. I can't. So do you want to maybe take a guess at how many million copies the Dirty Dancing soundtrack has sold worldwide? Just the original soundtrack, not like any other excessness.
Not like more Dirty Dancing?
No, just the original soundtrack.
Well, I do know that they weren't expecting it to be so popular.
Okay. And what?
And that they were 1 million copies back-ordered before they'd even released a single.
Right. So
but I don't know how
do
many
you think total worldwide? How many do you think in the U.S.?
1 billion.
I mean, it feels pretty close to 1 billion. It was 11 million in the United States, if that gives you an idea.
It went platinum
11 times.
Yeah.
11 times.
It's wild.
And then it's been 32 million worldwide.
Damn.
That's crazy. 19 weeks on the #1 chart. Then, there have been... So there was Dirty Dancing, the original album, right? Then there was more Dirty Dancing, which had a couple more of those 60s hits that we loved, and the randomness, like the Kellerman song and all that stuff. And then you had the Ultimate Dirty Dancing CD that was released with all of the songs in the order that they appeared in the film, which I think is kind of genius. And why don't we do that more often? Seriously, filmmakers. It makes so much sense to me sometimes. And then lastly, and most recently, on 2007, they released the 20th anniversary that had additional tracks as well as videos and a photo gallery. So yeah, get you some Dirty Dancing soundtrack. That's all I gotta say. I think, honestly, it's one of my faves. Aside from Flashdance, and I'll be honest, Top Gun is pretty close up there too. I mean, Big Chill's up there. There are a couple of 80s movies that are kind of up there even non-80s movies that are up there.
Well, I think it's kind of brilliant because those songs are usually meant to give us a nostalgic feeling about an era and take us back to a supposedly more innocent time. But when you contrast those to a lot of the subject matter of this film, it seems like they're maybe very intentionally
They're there for levity.
poking at, well, not just for levity, but maybe poking at that idea that we have this crazy nostalgia that America used to be a better place for everyone, and it wasn't. And
I mean, maybe a decade ago it was. I'll take even 5 years ago. Sorry, that's political.
what I mean is that people who want to turn back the clock and think we can live in the 60s again, well, the 60s weren't good for you if you weren't a white man. That, in this movie,
Upper
yeah,
class.
an upper class white male, and we see that, the
world still isn't good for you.
Yeah.
Unless you're a...
But I think that the songs, they do capture that era, but to me, it was a little different here in that they're playing these light, fun songs, but we're looking at a world in which abortion is illegal and women don't have many choices and they're treated as objects in many cases or as inferior. And the same thing with someone like Johnny
you're
is
making
treated
me depressed,
inferior. So,
and this is Soundtrack Smashes. And the music, I think, is actually some of the geniusness behind a lot of it. Like the compilation of the music is just great.
And they had a 2-song montage in here, which is unheard of.
Oh my goodness. I'm not even talking to you about this crap. All right. So what is your soundtrack smash? Oh, sarcastic one today.
Well, this one is dedicated to my mother because
What?
my mother...
I'm so confused right now. Didn't we just say that this is about sex and abortion and classism? All right, go ahead. I'm so confused.
Well, again, my mother was my role model for strong women in many ways. But my
Karen.
my mother was... she also was known, at least to my sister and I, as someone who would make comments in movies if she was irritated with something.
Yes.
And she would actually comment about what was going on. One of my favorites was that when I saw Star Wars prequel, The Phantom Menace, with her, and there's the scene where they talk about the midichlorians creating Anakin, and it sounds very much like a immaculate conception. She turned to me and she said, "Who does George Lucas think he is anyway?" And in this movie, the overload sequence,
This overload,
which again is a song that is more modern, but it's not being played within the context of the 60s. But in that scene where he has locked himself out of his car and it's raining, and he goes and he kicks the little light off the wooden stand and pulls it out of the ground and smashes the window on his car, my mother leaned over and said, "That's ridiculous." And she loved the rest of the movie, but she was so annoyed by him like smashing out his window without really thinking about it much. He's
So you're picking overload?
Yeah, I am picking overload in honor of how much that scene annoyed my mother.
That's so fucking typical of you. That is just typical of you.
Yes, it is.
I hate you so much right now.
I don't even really
and
like that song.
I know you don't. You're just, that's such bullshit. I call bullshit on your entire pick. I mean, I sort of can't because you're talking about your mother and she's dead, so you just can't do that.
That's true.
But I still call bullshit because my mom's dead too, so fuck you. I can call bullshit. No one else can, probably, but I can. Well, your sister could, but so I call bullshit.
You can call it?
I am. That's crap, Parry. That is a fucking cop-out.
What, are you asking me for to actually retract?
I am fucking asking you for a legit soundtrack smash, asshole. And there are plenty to fucking choose from. In fact, there are 27 songs in this movie that you can choose from. And if you take out the fucking Kellerman's anthem, there are 26. So there are 26 legit songs to actually pick from.
Okay, I'm going to close my eyes and point at the list just a second.
Oh my God. Go fuck yourself.
What'd I pick?
In the Still of the Night, which is much fucking better.
Okay,
Jesus
yeah, I'll
Christ.
take that.
You're a dick. Total fucking dick. This is why you should never watch Dirty Dancing with your significant other, and I'm so glad we didn't. I would have whomped you. This soundtrack is so... I can't even... Okay. I'm going to rewind, and maybe you'll understand my level of disdain for your not taking the soundtrack sacredly, and I too also need to be fed. So
sacrilegious.
This is all bad. This is all gonna go downhill on this podcast real fast. We're gonna get divorced over the Dirty Dancing fucking soundtrack, and I think Paul Rubens would be completely fine if I explain this correctly to him.
Paul, help us. We need you.
No, we don't.
You're our only hope.
It's okay. We're fine. We're gonna get large margins. It's gonna be all right. So, or the chick from the Alamo. One out of the two.
There's no basement in the Alamo.
Exactly.
It's Jan Hooks.
Okay. So Jan, wherever you are, we're doing this in honor of you. Stop.
I think she might not be alive anymore.
Oh, shit. Really?
I
God damn it. Why do I always call out the dead people? Anyway, your mom is not happy with you right now, by the way. So the reason why this soundtrack is so crazy influential for me is that at the time, we didn't own, funny enough, the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. So I never heard I've Had the Time of My Life played on repeat except for the radio. I didn't hear all those songs. What we did have was more Dirty Dancing. So we had all the 60s stuff. We had all that other stuff instead.
Yes.
So I didn't get saturated, I guess, maybe with the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. And my dad would play it upstairs on the record player. Because there's so many awesome songs from that album. So I have two actually, because I think you need to have one from each album, unlike Parry just picking one fucking randomly.
No, there was meaning behind it.
Yeah.
I've always remembered it for that reason.
I love it. There's meaning, but it's just to annoy your mother. This just really goes to show exactly who you are as a husband too. You should just annoy me all the time. I feel like that pick was almost to annoy your mother and to me, because I've been playing out the soundtrack for the last 2 weeks.
Jan Hooks is dead, by the way, 2014.
Well, there's no basement in the goddamn Alamo, so it's fine. And she said the lines. Oh, God, I do need to get fed. So I have two. And one is from more Dirty Dancing. It's Do You Love Me by the Contours. Contours were found by Berry Gordy. So Motown era. It was released originally in 1962, hit the top 40s market. And then it also, when it was re-released, it hit again in the top 40 in 1988. So that was pretty neat to go ahead and do. I would be remiss without giving a nod to the best original song, or what that won the best original song Academy Awards, Time of My Life by Bill Medley and Jennifer Warnes. I'd be remiss because that is what everybody equates with this movie, and it performed spectacularly. And I'm sure that song was largely having to do with the fact that the soundtrack spent 19 weeks at the number one position.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It is. But I too was sentimental, and I picked She's Like the Wind by Patrick Swayze, which peaked at number 3. But still, I feel like the man could act, and he sang, and it was actually referential to this movie, even though it was created for another movie initially.
Grand View USA, I think it is.
But it was referential to this movie, because I really do feel like that is all about Baby and Johnny's relationship entirely. And sometimes, while the person might not see who they are, sometimes when you view yourself through a loved one's eyes, you then can become this person that they think that you are.
Yes.
And that's what you've done for me, honey. So fuck you for going ahead and annoying me earlier in this podcast. And now you're turning red. And you have that look of shame.
That's just because we had the air conditioner off and it's
no,
warm in
you
here.
have the look of shame. And I think you should resonate. I think you should go ahead and like sit and
stew in that for a little while.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, you should go ahead and just...
I will say that in a very 80s way, I do like Hungry Eyes.
Okay, Eric Carr. I can see that. I would have accepted that.
I do think Hungry Eyes is one of those that I would not have liked when I saw this as a kid, and that I think has grown on me maybe from listening to lots of 80s channels over the years. I think there's a lot of old friends who would probably be like, really, what the fuck, Barry? But I actually, in listening to it again, I kind of enjoyed it. So,
all right. Good job. I'm glad you sort of redeemed yourself.
And of course, all the songs of the 60s are great to listen to. I always enjoy them. So they're all fun and fabulous, but I just couldn't pick one.
You are no longer my love man. Just letting you know.
Is that in the movie?
It is.
Oh, I forgot.
What? You're so bad right now. Cause I'm a love man. Anyway, so yeah, I think that's it for soundtrack smashes. I know we kind of sort of glossed over a couple of things there because there are so many awesome songs, but you should just get the soundtrack. I think it's like Flashdance. You're not going to be sad that you bought the soundtrack at all, except if you're Parry and you're a heartless fucking soul individual.
You've been playing it for the last couple of weeks, and I can always listen to it. So I will say that it's a soundtrack that it doesn't get old easily. Like you can have it playing in the background, but I think that's how I'd been treating this whole movie for so long. It's just a soundtrack in the background that if it was on, I really either wasn't paying attention or watching it. I just wasn't hearing it and wasn't seeing it. But yeah, coming back around to the beginning, I really feel like some of the issues that they're discussing hit home more and more, like when what's his name, Robbie, is when she's trying to get Robbie to help, when Baby's trying to get him to help with the money for Penny, and he pulls out a copy of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead and says that, you know, some people are just more important than others, or some people mean more than others. And, you know, right now, when we see what's going on with, you know, separating children from parents at the border, I think that's exactly the statement that people are making, is that some people are more important than others, at least in their eyes.
Yeah, there are so many layers to this film that I don't think are really, and I sort of wrote like a laundry list, so I'm going to read it to you really quick. So, you know, upper class versus working class or blue collar workers, this idea of growing up, right? So what does it mean to grow up? Looking through these rose-colored glasses, I think that sometimes we want to see the world for what we think it is, and then too often there are these events that make us realize that the world is not how we pictured it. There's this idea of also seeing the best in each other, right? And standing up, like the first time that you stand up to your parents, like what did that look like? And
I remember it.
I think I remember it. I remember it with my dad, not so much with my mom. I was always a sucker for my mom. So pretty much whatever she said would go a lot of the time. But my dad, I would definitely be defiant.
Especially once I went to college.
Oh, no, mine is pre-college. I think I was like 16 and he wanted to give me a curfew. And I was like, I've never had a curfew my entire life. I'm out. Like, see you later. I'm going out to this club and I should be back around 2-ish, maybe 3.
Yeah, no, I never would have gotten away with that shit.
Oh, no, I'll be back whenever I'm going to be back. You know who I'm with. It's all good. You have everybody. Like, it was fine. You have my beeper number.
Damn. Yeah, no, mine was in college when I came home and they looked at me and they're like, who the fuck is this kid?
You were pretty scary in college.
Yeah. That transformation did not happen in high school. It was definitely college.
So there's also this idea of an abortion, a woman's right to choose, responsibility and pregnancy. I mean, there's just so much. The loss of virginity, sibling rivalry. So just vying for the attention of a parent. So just even that idea of who's the favorite, or who's mom's favorite, who's dad's favorite. And then why is it more important for the girls to be dad's favorite? Like, why is it dad's approval so much more?
Right.
This is very Freudian in a weird way.
And also who has good parents.
Yes.
Because remember, Penny talks about how she was kicked out at 16. And so a lot of her, what we fail to often look at when we accuse people of what they are, what they become, is how they grew up and some of the influence they had or the lives that they had as kids.
Yes.
And
how very influential that can all be when your parents fuck you up.
Yeah. Or whether you had a support network, whether you could turn to anyone to say, I need help, I need money, I need some kind of support in place. And those who can't, who don't have that.
Right. So yeah, lots of underlying messages. I mean, I'm glad I watched it again. How about you?
Very much so. And like I said, there's still a lot of sort of fluff, fun entertainment in it, and you can take it as such. And there's a whole lot of things in it that are just fun to watch and funny. And you can watch the sexiness of this dance scenes if you want, and just pay attention to that. I love the scene where they do the dance together at the other hotel, and she doesn't do
Sheldrake.
Yes, and she doesn't do the lift. The fact that she doesn't accomplish the big thing. So I thought that was fun that they didn't have her carry through with that, and it is a well-made movie in that respect as well. But I think that, again, the messages that we don't necessarily get the first time we see it were very impactful to me this time.
So the takeaway is to watch Dirty Dancing again and actually watch the movie, and not just for the sing-along aspect of it, but really for the deeper underlying meanings. And I don't know how he made Dirty Dancing so heavy, but it really does have all of these heavy sort of messages within it. Anything else?
Well, I have to say, and this is where my ugly comes in, and it's not an
what?
It's not an ugly about the movie.
Okay.
It's just, as someone who has worked with youth much of my adult life.
Oh boy, get ready for the soapbox, folks.
I can't help but do this, because I think the characters in this movie are obviously older people playing teenagers or young people, but I think people easily forget what it's like to be that age and what it's like to talk to young people and to understand young people. And someone who has worked with primarily teenagers throughout much of my adult career working with nonprofits, I found the scenes of Penny having to go and get a back alley abortion very frustrating and disturbing. Not only has Planned Parenthood been defunded, but also the teen pregnancy prevention programs have been defunded. An organization I worked for recently was supposed to get 4 years. They cut it immediately. They got, I think, less than 2. And I worked with a lot of these kids at the schools, and they've dropped it in favor of abstinence only. Now, I know that in the perfect world, kids are going to be abstinent, but we don't live in that world. And if you want to see that world happen, you're going to have to change society, but you can't do it by force, and you can't change kids' behavior by force. And it just doesn't work that way. And what is... the classes that they taught in teen pregnancy prevention, the TPP, was not just about sex. It was about ways to prevent it. Sure, all kinds of contraception, but also about STDs and what they do to you and how you can get them. But also,
and how to say no until you're ready.
It was also, yes, about positive self-perception and how to not be bullied into sex or how not be forced into it. And I don't know if they're going to teach that in these abstinence-only classes. I hope they do. But what they definitely aren't taking into consideration is that, as they try and force this agenda, the same people who are going to push this are the same people who, when these kids grow up in 15 years or so, and we have all of these kids who grew up in bad situations, the same people are going to do nothing to push for social programs or educational programs. And so a lot of these kids are going to be unwanted or have no resources growing up. And so a lot of them are going to become the monetary units for the prison industrial complex. What they don't really even realize is the hypocrisy of what they're saying and the contradiction, because if you treat youth like idiots and you try to scare them out of something instead of giving them the information and the tools to critically think about it, then they're going to make poor decisions. And sometimes they're going to do it just to spite you. Again, in that contradiction, you can't tell kids, especially like after a school shooting, the ones who just want to be heard, that you don't know what you're talking about and you don't understand and you're basically idiots. And then to those same kids, tell them you need to make good decisions and expect them to make all of these very informed and good decisions when you've just called them idiots. There will be back alley abortions again, and there will be kids in trouble again who have no one to turn to. And so I think that this is more relevant than ever when you have people who don't consider how to address that, and you don't just do it with defunding everything and saying fend for yourself. So that affected me in a very personal way and made me very upset. And if you want to write me, fine. We can have a civilized conversation about it because I have been in the middle of this as part of my career. So, Dirty Dancing.
Dirty Dancing.
Let's go take some dance lessons.
We already have taken dance lessons.
Yeah, we never did the lift, though.
We don't know. There's no reason why we should ever do the lift. There's no reason why anyone should ever do the lift.
I think I forgot how to salsa.
Patrick Swayze had like bad knees, and he did that lift, and he wasn't supposed to do that lift either.
Part of why he had bad knees, he wanted to do his own stunts, and that log scene. I was like, how is he not falling off this log? Well, apparently he did, and busted up his knee.
Yeah, I think they both fell off.
Yeah,
at several points. Maybe not such a light-hearted, fun ending as always. However, I think that you bring up very poignant remarks about sometimes just from a different perspective. And that's sort of what this episode has really been about. So how to take a look at things just from a different perspective and maybe understand some deeper, more hidden meanings behind our actions and what we're doing. So that's a good way to wrap it up.
And I think we've noticed a theme in our films that we've looked at.
80s was a time for rebels, folks. Speaking of rebels, shameless self-promo, please rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast. The more you rate, review, and subscribe, the more people that can find us. And who wouldn't want to have a super serious conversation about Dirty Dancing and all of its implications within this century?
And given our experience with this, we've decided we're going to start on occasion watching films we've seen but not seen for a while so that, like I said at the beginning, we're watching them again for the first time. Also, we're going to make some tentative steps into the 90s.
We are. There are a couple of 90s movies that I haven't seen. I think Parry's seen them all. But I was clubbing or some such thing.
And I was in the dark movie theater or at home with a stack of VHSs. So it shows what our lives were like.
You were like a porn person. Like I was in a dark
I couldn't get
theater.
my hands on porn on VHS.
I was in the VHS.
And
You're not supposed to tell people that you looked.
There was no internet back then.
This is not. Oh my God. He fails to recognize that all of my family is listening to this at this point. Okay, so yeah, check out our website. You haven't seen whatmovie.com. Our social media, Insta, Facebook, Twitter. You haven't seen What Movie, and keep letting us know what you guys think, what you don't think, what we could be doing better, or any movies out there that you think we should take a look at, a second glance at. I mean, there's some things that I don't think we should take a second glance at. Like, I don't think I want to overanalyze Goonies.
No, I
just don't think
we've seen it recently too. We don't need to. Goonies, Back to the Future, Ghostbusters. Some of those we don't need to watch again for the first time.
I don't want to do that. Yeah. Because I'm not ruining my childhood. I'm not just going to ruin my childhood talking about banks and corporations and foreclosing. Oh my God. See, I already went down that road. It's time to eat, folks. So thank you for hanging in with us. This was a long one, but we think you wanted it because you seem to like when we do all these sort of popular type movies about dancing.
Oh, you mean movies people have actually seen as opposed to one of my favorites that we reviewed early on that very few have seen?
I mean, I think I had a similar one too. So we're all good. We're all good. We're pretty even on that. I think I actually had two. I mean, if you've seen Midnight Madness or Billie Jean, I hope you've seen it now that you've listened to us. So that would also be cool too. If you want to tell us that you've now watched a movie that you might not have seen because of this podcast, I'm down with that too.
Yep, we had some folks who watched
April Fool's Day.
Yeah,
a couple of folks that did that. But yeah, so rate, review, subscribe. Thanks for listening to us talk about our crazy movies and our perceptions and views. And hey, it's all good to have a conversation about something. I think having a conversation and getting different perspectives on things just brings enlightenment. So
can we have a conversation about overload?
No, we cannot fucking have a conversation. We can have a conversation of anything that other than overload and why you chose to choose that. I'm judging you. I mean, yes, I might judge you, but I'm judging you based on that. You're my husband. I'm allowed to judge you in a way, I would think.
I will accept your judgment.
I know. That's why you married me. So I'm very judgy. So thanks. You are very judgy. So thank you so much for listening to our podcast. And as always,
be kind.
Rewind.
Don't I usually say the other one?
What?
Don't I usually say rewind?
I say rewind?
God, it's been a couple weeks.
Every time I say rewind.
Oh, yeah, you do.
You just wanted a different outro.
No.
Liar. Exactly.
It's overload.
Fuck off.